When Kim Jong visited Beijing on the 3rd of September with her father, this was a clear sign that, according to the North Korean regime, she is someone who is a very important and significant actor. Kim Jong-un, however, has not designated his daughter as his successor officially. Now, there were questions as to whether he might want to do that, because Kim Jong-un himself only came onto the scene very late in the day, only a couple of years before his father Kim Jong-il died in December 2011. That said, we must also not rule out Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Jong. She has risen up the ranks of the North Korean elite relatively quickly. She has been issuing statements of her own for several years now. She has a position as the deputy director of the propaganda and agitation department. And when her brother was incapacitated with COVID, she took his place in issuing these vitriolic statements against South Korea and against the US and against the West. So she must not be ruled out as well. If Kim Jong-un were to drop dead tomorrow, it's highly unlikely that his 11-year-old if Kim Jong-un were to drop dead tomorrow, it's highly unlikely that his 11 or 12-year-old daughter would take power. Power would, in that case, most likely be transferred to his sister. But there is something that Kim Jong-un and the Kim regime want to show in these public displays of Kim Jong-un and his little daughter. I think, firstly, it's that Kim Jong-un is a family man. I think there's a lot of domestic propaganda messaging here. He wants to send a clear signal to the North Korean people that Kim Jong-un is a paternal figure. Secondly, there is a clear intention on the part of the Kim regime to show the North Korean people and the world that the Kim regime, this treasured Baekdu bloodline, is not going anywhere anytime soon. And crucially, that North Korea as a nuclear-armed state is not going anywhere anytime soon. In my view, the single biggest threat to the Kim Jong-un regime is information. Kim Jong-un fears the information virus far more than any coronavirus. Kim Jong-un fears that the North Korean people accessing information from outside will undermine his domestic legitimacy. There is a clear reason why Kim Jong-un used coronavirus when North Korea's borders were closed for over 3 years to clamp down on what he called reactionary ideology, particularly targeting young North Koreans, targeting their hairstyles, targeting what they wear, targeting how they speak, targeting the music they listen to. K-pop is obviously not allowed. But information and the steady flow of information is one of the biggest threats to the Kim Jong-un regime domestically. And this is why, in my view, we need to continue sending more information into North Korea. We should not be stopping this. We should be continuing to send information into North Korea to open up the minds of the North Korean people. Because information access is one of the key reasons for North Koreans to defect and leave the country. I think one of the biggest misconceptions people have of Kim Jong-un is that he is completely irrational and completely crazy. This is wrong. North Korea has a clear strategy to its behavior. It's what I call strategic delinquency, behaving badly in order to reap rewards. This strategy was present even before North Korea had nuclear weapons. And now that North Korea has nuclear weapons, Kim Jong-un has one goal: for North Korea to be recognized as a de facto nuclear-armed state. And this is part of a strategy. We see this with North Korea's relations with Russia and China at the moment, playing them off, trying to extract benefits from both. Because on the part of North Korea, that's what it wants. It wants to reap rewards from its delinquent behavior. When Kim Jong-un had his meetings with Trump in 2018 and 2019, 3 meetings in the space of 2 years, this gave Kim Jong-un a big status boost. And one of the things that we are seeing, and that we saw back then in 2018 in Singapore, 2019 in Hanoi and at the DMZ, and now with Russia and China, is that status and legitimacy is key and very important for Kim Jong-un. I think that North Korea is at its most emboldened position that it ever has been. We've seen North Korea strengthen its ties with Russia, particularly in terms of security cooperation since Russia's invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. And in addition to this deepening of the security relationship, particularly this year, we've seen relations broaden and expand into sectors beyond security, such as disaster management, such as culture. This was all outlined in the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty that the two countries signed last year on the 19th of June. But what we also see is both Russia and North Korea referring to each other as an alliance. Russia was hitherto rather reluctant to refer to North Korea as an ally, but as of this year, Russia has started to use this word. I think on the part of North Korea, in terms of its position on the world stage, Kim Jong-un has done quite well in being seen and being portrayed as an equal to Xi Jinping and to Putin. This is what Kim Jong-un wants. And Kim Jong-un has been given international legitimacy. His presence at Beijing's Victory Day parade on the 3rd of September demonstrated this. Kim Jong-un rarely travels abroad, and this was the first multilateral meeting, for lack of a better word, that Kim attended. We also saw Kim Jong-un host his own parade on the 10th of October to celebrate 80 years of the formation of North Korea's army. And what we saw there was Kim Jong-un again standing shoulder to shoulder with former Russian leaders, senior Chinese officials, and North Korea also signed agreements with Vietnam and with Laos. And this is not insignificant. The reason these agreements are significant is that it shows that North Korea doesn't just want to rely on its principal economic benefactor of China, doesn't just want to limit itself to its security cooperation with Russia, which I think will be ongoing if the Ukraine war ends, but wants to expand to other countries, particularly in Southeast Asia, with which the North Korean regime can try and forge new links and rekindle old links, old partnerships. Kim Jong-un has been far more successful than his father Kim Jong-il at doing so, and Kim Jong-un is doing what his grandfather Kim Il-sung did during the Cold War, play off Moscow against Beijing to try and get benefits from both and strengthen North Korea's relations with other like-minded countries. We know that North Korea has been receiving financial and food assistance from Russia, as well as crude oil. But we also know that Russia has been transferring both military and missile technology, but also expertise and know-how to help North Korea develop its own missile and nuclear program. And we know very little about the details of this latter component, but we cannot rule out the fact that this has been taking place, and this is very concerning. Crucially, the sanctions regime is being severely undermined by the collaboration between not just Russia and North Korea, but by China and North Korea. And what's important to note is that in 2017, Russia and China, together with the other members of the UN Security Council, the other permanent members, agreed and unanimously agreed to impose sanctions on North Korea, particularly in terms of the transfer of material to assist North Korea's nuclear and missile development. North Korea has actually benefited the most as part of this axis of evil, whatever term you want to use, this axis of authoritarian countries united in their opposition to the West. North Korea has benefited from its ties with China and Russia. We know historically North Korea and Iran, and they still do have some links. But I think North Korea has emerged from this extremely emboldened. When we speak of this axis of evil, or the CRINC, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, as many have termed this relationship between these countries, it's important to remember that they are not in a formalized alliance. The relations between the countries are asymmetric. Even if we take Russia and North Korea, if Russia is giving North Korea missile and military technology, which is highly likely, North Korea is giving Russia soldiers, missiles, over 12 million rounds of artillery. Okay. But I think what's important to remember is that the foreign policy priorities of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are not the same. That said, whilst we should not overestimate this axis, it is extremely naive to underestimate it. The fact that these states are not in a formalized alliance actually means we should pay more, not less attention to them, in my view.